So, we're going to close out our series on pets by talking about more of those animals that tend to be regarded as throwaway pets because they often don't live as long or require as much attention as a dog or a cat. Now, as an animal lover myself, I want to be clear in saying that reptiles, rodents, small mammals, crustaceans, amphibians, and birds need to be cared for properly. And if you're buying one for a small child as a starter pet with the idea that it'll probably die in the child's care and teach a lesson about responsibility, well, you're right. And I really discourage that sort of thinking because these animals don't deserve to be treated as if their lives are unimportant. If it were up to me, we'd require owners to treat these pets with the same care that most municipalities extend to dogs and cats. Hermit crabs, snakes, and turtles may not be cuddly, but they still deserve to have a respectable life if you're going to care for them, and small mammals can often live a lot longer if you bother to do your research to care for them properly. Unfortunately, I do blame marketing for a lot of the poor treatment of small pets. Most pet stores have stopped selling puppies and kittens and only adopt them out now through rescue organizations. But all the major retailers still carry birds, mammals, and reptiles, often not appropriately housed and alongside products that aren't good for the pets or which are even sometimes toxic to them. And I know from people who have worked at some of the big chains that they regularly have to dispose of dead animals who have died in terrible conditions by being smushed, dropped, manhandled, or attacked by other inhabitants of their cages. They get sick and die due to poor hygiene conditions, and they get startled by dogs that come into the stores, and sometimes they even escape and then starve to death. Not everywhere is like that, though. In my area, we have a reptile store that spends a lot of time educating its customers on the proper care and feeding of the reptiles they sell, and they will actually deny the sale of an animal to someone who seems like they're not going to care for that animal properly. That is the right, responsible way to do things. So I want to go on record that I'm not a fan of small animal sales unless the sellers are taking the right steps to educate buyers and help guide them to the right products and appropriately sized habitats or enclosures for their animals. Corporate social responsibility, or CSR, should be factored in when you're buying a pet, and please don't patronize stores that aren't providing this basic level of service. So here we are. We're going to talk about small pets and end our series on pet marketing. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. Only about 5 to 6 million households in the United States own a reptile, rodent, rabbit, or bird as a pet. According to data from the American Veterinary Medical Association, or AVMA, only 1.8% of households own reptiles, and other data suggest turtles, both aquatic and terrestrial, are probably the most popular, followed by snakes. Birds are next at 1.6%, and the most popular of these include parakeets, which are also known as budgies, as well as cockatiels, cockatoos, canaries, conures, finches, lovebirds, parrotlets, parrots, and macaws. And among small mammals owned by about 0.8% of households, that includes hamsters, guinea pigs, gerbils, rats, mice, chinchillas, hedgehogs, sugar gliders, rabbits, and ferrets. But I was not able to find any reliable research on the distribution of these critters. One of the reasons why, I suspect, is because many of these small rodents are purchased for children as starter pets, and they have a low life expectancy as a result. Chinchillas are actually able to live quite a while. They can live 10 to 15 years, while rabbits can live 5 to 10 years, guinea pigs can live 5 to 8 years, and ferrets can live 5 to 7, but most other small mammals live just a few years, and people act accordingly as a result. Hermit crabs, which are another popular small pet for children, can live quite a long time if they're properly cared for, around 10 to 30 years, with some living up to 40 in captivity. And believe it or not, this is one of the few animals that actually does better in the wild than captive. These little guys can live up to 50 to 70 years in the wild, and it actually takes them 25 years to grow to their full size. Unfortunately, they don't live nearly as long if they're not cared for properly. A lot of pet owners buy them in little plastic terrariums with a thin layer of sand, and those things don't provide heat, water, or substrate for them, and they're going to die as a result. Where a lot of people mess up with these creatures is by not providing them appropriate depth so that they can bury themselves underground when they're molting. They will die if they try to molt in insufficient soil. They also need tropical conditions with lots of humidity and heat in order to thrive, as well as places where they can climb or hide. Properly taken care of, they're actually really fun to watch, but that generally means having a large terrarium with multiple viewing angles and a lot of patience during the weeks or months that they're underground molting. Hermit crabs are also social creatures, which means that responsible pet owners should invest in a group of them, not just one. And another reason that they die is because people try to provide them with artificial or painted shells, which actually can be toxic to them. They need natural ones of different sizes, and they also need to be left alone and not handled, since one of the things people often try to do is force them out of their shells. The amount of care you need to provide for a hermit crab may sound like a lot for such a small and inexpensive pet, but this is exactly what I mean when I say a lot of these small pets really probably shouldn't be pets unless they're going to be cared for with the same dedication as a dog or a cat. Much like the fish we discussed yesterday, they really should be positioned towards animal enthusiasts and hobbyists, and responsible pet stores should absolutely require customers purchase or show proof of owning the appropriate equipment to care for these critters. Now, fortunately, there are a lot of really cool things you can do with smaller animals. Let's begin with small rodents like mice, gerbils, hamsters, and rats. All of these rodents enjoy having areas where they can do a lot of climbing and exploring, and they also enjoy having toys to play with. Most domestic rodents are also quite affectionate and enjoy playing gently with their owners, though they do tend to scent mark, so it's important to be aware of the small amounts of urine that they leave behind on things. Guinea pigs and chinchillas in particular need large spaces to explore because they're bigger animals that still need to be kept in enclosures, and rabbits absolutely need monitored, fenced-off areas for exercise and safe areas like enclosures or hutches to protect them from predators. You can also buy or build transparent tubing and tunnels for small mammals to utilize to get out of their enclosures and go on adventures. Mice in particular love to play in these areas, and you can build tracks around the room to offer some exciting viewing. The problem is that they do need to be cleaned out regularly and replaced when they're wearing out, just like the children's playland at McDonald's, or else they can become vectors for disease. Small mammals tend to urinate and defecate in their enclosures, and so you need to clean up after them. Unlike cats, there are no high-tech products for cleaning up small mammal waste, and in fact, a lot of the resources you'll find for cleaning up after rats and mice are just things that are framed with them being pests. So most of the products you're going to need and you're going to find at stores are going to be bedding and litter pans, and many of the products you'll find for their enclosures are made to be disposable or washable, and they cost at most $20 to $30. And many of the toys and enhancements are only $10 or less. Reptiles require a different approach because they tend to require a simple but appropriately sized habitat that can be kept warm. They're not as interested in toys and aren't especially active since they're cold-blooded and tend to conserve energy. Turtles may have a reputation for being slow, but they're actually fairly active since they like to swim. Lizards, snakes, land turtles, and chameleons don't do nearly as much until it's feeding time. And feeding reptiles is interesting since many of them are predators and either eat live prey or need freeze-dried animals or insects to eat. Dinner time is when they tend to come alive and put on a show. Snakes often eat small rodents like mice whole, and many others will eat insects like crickets, grasshoppers, or mealworms. Pet stores tend to sell these food items in freeze-dried or frozen varieties, though live insects are a pretty common food as well. Much like small mammals, reptiles don't have a lot of high-tech products available for them. They're more like fish, where a lot of the investment goes into creating effective habitats for them and then manually cleaning up things out from time to time. Birds don't have much in the way of high-tech products either, but they do require a lot more care and attention than you might assume. Birds don't have much in the way of high-tech products either, but they do require a lot more care and attention than you might assume. One of the main reasons people like to have birds is because they're trainable, and many popular breeds can mimic human sounds. Most pet breeds eat seeds or fruit and don't require a lot of attention, though you do have to ensure they're eating the correct food and not overindulging in things they like but which aren't giving them proper nutrition. They also tend to do well at room temperature and don't require super sophisticated habitats. They're also not too hard to clean up after, since their droppings tend to be easily captured at the bottom of the enclosure. But you know what? Birds do require two things a lot of people don't think about: UV light and enrichment toys. It turns out birds need to get some exposure to sunlight or an artificial source of ultraviolet light to be healthy. And they also get bored and they need mental stimulation. When they get upset, they may develop health problems and they may also start having skin or feather problems and even begin plucking their own feathers. And so, products have evolved to provide birds with collars or even little jackets that can prevent them from self mutilation until that root cause is addressed. Birds also sometimes need training in behavior modification, particularly parrots and macaws and cockatiels and cockatoos, which are actually quite intelligent and prone to biting, screaming, or even self-pleasure when they're bored or their hormones are being impacted by the environment or season. That means that there's a cottage industry of bird behavior specialists, books, and products designed to alleviate those issues. I thought there might be a lot of products out there for tracking escaped birds or preventing them from getting loose, but surprisingly, there are not. Clipping wings is the most common method of preventing birds from being able to fly away, but it's a controversial practice some veterinarians oppose. Some bird owners feel that clipping wings teaches their birds to have safer indoor behaviors like climbing, since they can't fly easily, and clipped wings keep them away from hazards like ceiling fans or places that are hard to reach. But others suggest birds should be trained like any other pet and that indoor birds need to be taught when and where it's safe to fly. I personally would recommend against clipping a bird's feather unless it's medically necessary, since clipping wings seems to me like the same argument you'd make for declawing a cat, which most veterinarians now refuse to do. Well, that wraps up our look at the pet market and all the various ways in which we care for our animals. I'd like to close with a couple of thoughts. First of all, having pets is a wonderful experience if you're concerned about the animals and invest the right amount of time, energy, and money into ensuring they have a good life under your care. And research is always warranted. Being willing to treat your pets with kindness and not viewing them as throwaway or a kid's first pet is really important. Secondly, there is a lot of opportunity for marketers to look at smaller animals and find solutions to many of the problems that result in animals not being cared for properly. One issue with small animals is that people expect to spend very little on them and aren't invested in their care and thus get stinky cages and prematurely sick or dead animals as a result of poor hygiene and care. Marketers could offer better solutions to small animal purchasers and perhaps even make it more acceptable for people to consider these pets as being on the same level as dogs and cats, not just as cheaper alternatives. I also wanted to mention that we're going to take a break next week while our production team is out, and we'll be returning in June with a bunch of new interviews and new ideas to explore. I've also got some new video and sound equipment to help us upgrade the look and feel of the show, so it's going to be an exciting return. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. See you in June. So here's a reminder. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. According to Mental Health America, nearly 1 in 5 American adults will have a diagnosable mental health condition in any given year, and 46% of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their life. Half of those people will develop conditions by the age of 14. Mental health is something we all should take seriously. Please do not be afraid to seek help. You're not alone in your struggles, and if you know someone who's struggling with mental health conditions, please help in any way that you can. Sometimes all it takes is a simple text checking in on them, and it could end up saving their life. If you find yourself needing immediate help, please text or call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. And if you would like to learn more or you need assistance in finding help, you can visit Mental Health America's website at mhanational.org. There's also an option on the page to donate if you feel so inclined, and I hope that you will.